to play the song, play the thing in. Actually, that will be something I end up bringing up anyway. Um, so I'm here with JM Lopez, JM as most people call you. As far as I know, Grant just told me that you go by JM. So,
Yeah.
um, you are the singer of the band The Body Rampant, and as you could hear, you playing guitar. One of the questions I actually was going to ask you is, do you play an instrument, and how much of the songwriting do you actually do for the band?
Mm.
But we will get to that shortly. Let's start a little bit with a background on you and how you got into music and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think my uncle got me into music when I was like 9 or 10. He kind of was showing me bands like Green Day and all those OG bands you listen to when you're a kid, Nirvana, Aerosmith, all that kind of classic rock stuff. And he wanted me to play bass, and so I was like, "Nah, I want to play guitar." So my brother and my parents and stuff, they got me like my first guitars, like when I was like just Sears catalog, cheap shit. And then just slowly started getting better strats and stuff. I was taking guitar lessons from this like amazing jazz guitar player for about 4 years, and then I was like his little protege. I was like his little dude. And I was just like always with him, and then started a band, it was just high school band, just like pretty much normal after that point, just touring and stuff ever since I was like 15, and I'm 32 now, so, you
So
know,
obviously, I mean, we're the same age. I think I got you by a year, but so I mean, you mentioned sort of classic rock and Green Day, which I don't think I would have considered classic rock, but I guess at this point, with as long as they've been around, I guess to a degree they are sort of a classic rock band. Not necessarily in sound,
well,
but
you know what I mean, but
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
it was like all around that same time, and you're like, when you're a kid, you're getting into like all this shit at the same time, it like hits you, so it's like, that was back when Nirvana was cool, and then Kurt was still alive at the time, I think, and yeah, it was a crazy time for like alternative music back then, so.
Growing up out west where you are, uh, I always feel like something like when I was listening to your EPs and the one full length and a couple of the singles you've put out over the last shit, I guess 6 years now. I didn't even realize it's been that long. Over the last 6 years, I picked up on a lot of influences to me that I hear, and what's interesting is some of the sounds that I hear are stuff from that would have been around the time we were in high school, like the 2000s bands that just kind of started mixing sort of the rawness of like the very beginnings of Green Day and Nirvana and stuff like that. Like a band like the Used, like I really when
Yeah.
listening to the EP today, I was like, man, this really sounds like In Love and Death. The like just as far like how not necessarily all over the place, but just like how sincere and like honest it sounds while showcasing a lot of different dynamics of the band. And I feel like a lot of bands from that time period, that emo scene, quote unquote, for those who aren't going to see the visuals of me using my fingers, but I kind of it reminded me of like how genre pushing that time period of music was, and I kind of realized that a lot of it was due to bands like you're saying like Nirvana and Green Day and a lot of these bands that also were pushing genres and melding them together. So how much of that though was due to growing up in California and having a lot of those bands, like you're they're not my thing that I'm really into, but like Sublime must have been like a huge thing around that time out living out there and
Yeah.
being around when it was, they're still a relevant band being active.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to like Sublime's earlier records, like 40 Ounce to Freedom, like Robin the Hood and stuff. I would like the first like time I smoked weed was like with my sister listening to those records, and like 311 was
Right.
huge out here. Um, a lot of people listen to like the Expendables and like Slightly Stupid. I never got that far in like the reggae and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but Green Day and Rancid were really big because they blew up in the 924 Gilman scene in Berkeley, and so that was like the OG like underground punk thing. But then it got out of hand. They got the major label deal. Green Day got banned from that venue, and 924 Gilman's actually still doing its thing. It's still like
Really?
a volunteer ran, kind of like a collective It's out of Berkeley, so it's in like Oakland. It's in the hood. Like I've had my sister's car got broken into at several of the shows we've been to there, and it's just a really sketchy spot. But it's where a lot of the DIY bands that were true to what was going on, like Hot Water Music and Alkaline Trio when they were starting out, all those bands came through there. So the Bay Area scene was really cracking back then for sure. It was really notable for having, you got the Great American Music Hall, you got the Fillmore, you have Slim's, you have just all these such good venues out there, and the promoters were just killing it too.
Was being able to go see a lot of these bands and seeing a few different sort of subgenres of music between, like you're saying, hot water music or
Yeah.
alkaline trio and stuff like that, was seeing a lot of those bands in your formative playing years, like, do you think that shaped like a lot of you, like being able to kind of pull influences from all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, because Alkaline was playing like when they came out with God Damn It, was their first record through Asian Man Records, which was it's a label ran by Mike Park out of Oakland, which he's goes really far back in that like genre pushing when they were doing ska, mixing ska with jazz and all this kind of crazy punk and hardcore, and bands like MU330 and Slow Gherkin, all these bands were coming through Humboldt too, which was like 4 hours north of San Francisco, which is where I'm from. It's where I'm at right now. Um, but there was so I think I'm just used to like kind of genre pushing stuff, but not like too crazy. It's all about kind of like finding two things that haven't been done before. So that's kind of what we're starting to do now with the newer stuff that we haven't released yet, is like we're mixing like kind of like progressive tapping and progressive jazz stuff with like the emo, more influenced rock stuff that we've done in the past. So it's cool.
It's it's been interesting because I remember when a mutual friend of ours, Grant Trimbali, sent
Yeah.
me. I actually want to say it was like around the time of like MySpace, still like the tail end of that, and was like, "Yo, you should check out this band," and send me like a link or whatever. And I remember checking it out and being like, "Yeah, this is cool," but like it sounded like a lot of the stuff that I wasn't really. Uh, at that point, I think I was just so into like hardcore and like death metal and a bunch of like I was going like way more extreme in that direction and kind of leaving
Yeah.
that stuff behind. And it's been interesting that in the last handful of years, like it's sort of been like a resurgence, like I said a little bit ago,
Mm.
of that kind of emo screamo, whatever you want to call it. But like bands like Thursday, Thrice, The Used, My Chemical Romance, Taking Back Sunday. There's great more emphasis on writing and playing very well. And it's interesting to see a band like you guys. And when listening to it, I was like, oh man, you guys could totally go out with like a Dance Gavin Dance, or a lot of these bands on Warped Tour that are doing really well. And I could see you guys playing with them and still sounding like yourselves and having success doing that. And it's interesting and refreshing to kind of look at it from that perspective. Uh, but something I had in doing my research that I had kind of wanted to that I found actually was that used to be in a band that was signed to Rise Records.
Yeah.
I didn't see what the band name was, so I couldn't look it up. But I mean, was it a typical Rise record band, like just metalcore band?
Yeah, it's a metalcore band for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hate to say it like that, but it's like certain
No,
record labels when their bread and butter. It's like, all right, Rise Records is a typical metalcore label.
it's funny because when I wasn't an original member, and when the bass player, who we'd actually met on MySpace, like Classifieds or something years before, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey," he didn't even tell me the band name. He was like, "Hey man, I'm in a Rise band. Do you want to join?" And I was like, "Okay, well, I was like, what's the band name?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, or Every Bridge Burn." He was almost like scared to tell me like, I don't know if he's gonna like it. And because their vocalist was like trash. The vocalist on their first record wasn't their original vocalist. It was like someone they had to like scrape by last minute because they got signed, and they're like, "Oh, we gotta find a vocalist," and this dude just sounded like a dying fucking donkey or something. And you know, we cleaned things up a little bit and put out like we were gonna do a second record through Rise, but they only had offered us like I think $3,000 or something when they said they were gonna give us six or
Oh
some shit
wow.
like that. And they said that they had lost a lot of money with the band, which I'm sure they did. But I think for us at the time, like we were down, we were just like, but we were talking to like Ross Robinson, like Kurt Ballou, and like all these really big like metal producers and shit that were wanting way more than $3,000. You know what I mean? So
It's quite the
um,
broad spectrum of going from Ross Robinson, who's kind of known for making really raw sounding records, to
yeah,
Kurt Ballou, who does really great at making raw sounding records that don't sound like garbage. I mean, I'm not saying
yeah,
Ross Robinson makes garbage records. I love a lot of the stuff he's done, but on the same
mm-hmm.
token, like the production side of like how it's done, I think it's completely different. So, and
Yeah.
usually the stuff that does you do with Kurt, like it's usually of a very heavy nature. So it would have been interesting to
Well, we were
see.
heavy. We were trying to go. Our vocalist, the newer vocalist that we got, was into like a lot of really heavy shit, like Gaza and like really weird avant-garde, like art, like hardcore shit. And so we were like, our influences were all over the place. And so we were like, we would hole up in a cabin. Our drummer's like grandma had this cabin with like a pond out in Ohio, somewhere crazy. And we would just hole up and write all these weird ass songs. And so we were like, okay, we need a producer who can just like kind of take what we're doing and just put it into something that's like digestible, I guess. So, but
So
we didn't
I,
have the budget for that at all.
I was gonna say at that point though, like, are you contributing as the bass player, or was it just kind of a free form? Like, if
Oh,
you
I was
got
the
an
guitar
idea,
player. I was the guitar player in Every Bridge Burned.
okay,
Yeah, and their it was like their lead guitar player had quit, like their main songwriter had quit. I didn't know. I thought it was like just like a rhythm dude I was replacing. I came in, they were like, "Oh yeah, you're like learning all these leads and shit and all these sweeps." I was having to do sweeps, which I had never really done before, and had to like kind of change them up a little bit. But yeah, and so then I had to like start writing, and it was really cool because I was getting exposed to a lot of new bands from the vocalist. He turned me on to like Minus the Bear and like um, Russian Circles and Young Widows and a lot of this really cool shit. And that's like when the Body Rampant started. We were like influenced heavily by a lot of those like really artsy like instrumental bands and shit like that. You know, tone like super tone oriented
yeah.
bands and shit.
Well, that's really it's kind of funny to bring that up. When I was listening to the full discography as of up to now, even on the first stuff you put out in 2011, I was really shocked at how well production wise it sounds. Like it's not anything fighting for the mix. Like typically when a band puts out their first thing, usually it's like, oh, the drums were not, this part of the drums were too loud, or the vocals were too far in the mix, or you can't hear both
Right.
guitars, or whatever. And I was like, man, for 2011 and a first EP that you're putting out, like this is actually a really good sounding record. Like,
Thanks, man.
and upon knowing that you were in a signed band previously, it kind of made me wonder when you were starting TBR, was the experience that you had with the other band, was that did that give you a better idea of maybe where you wanted to start going with this other band, and as far
Yeah.
as sound and taking the time to get everything, and maybe like, I think a thing I typically see, and especially with people from signed bands who are so quick to cash in on whatever amount of fame they still have from that band,
Mhm.
is you'll see something where it's like, hey, well, I have this new project and it's featuring members of XYZ bands and so forth.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, man, this sounds kind of like shit, because it's like you find out like it was recorded in someone's like home studio, and it was just, you
Yeah.
know, done so that when the other band was done, they had something to push for the new tours that they were doing, playing small clubs
Yeah.
and shit. And it's like,
Right.
you know, the overall arc I've noticed is it seems like you guys take your time to do shit and put out quality product. And maybe that's
Thanks, man.
a different assumption than most would take just listening to your discography, but something I've seemed to have noticed. I don't
Thanks,
know how
brother.
I,
Yeah, I mean, we definitely like we did when we first started the Body Rampant, we did an EP. It was called Beast, and I'm pretty sure it's online somewhere. You might not have searched super hard enough, like it's on like Reverb Nation or something.
yeah, I wouldn't have gone to that.
Yeah, I mean it's deep out there somewhere, and that's kind of like where you'll find kind of more of the raw shit, like the demo each sounding type stuff that we did. It was never put, on Spotify or Apple Music or anything. We might remaster it possibly. It's just those were the songs when we first started the project. There was pianos and violins. It was kind of like when A Lot Like Birds started. They had all this like really crazy artsy shit going on. And then we kind of scrapped that, and then Casey Bates, who did our EP, who produced our EP, he was actually supposed to originally do those first songs, but like the email was in his junk folder or some shit, and he wrote me back and he was like, "Hey, dude, do you guys still want to record?" And it was actually just me at the time, and he was like, "Do you guys want to record?" And I was like, "Oh fuck, well, I mean, it's just me, but I have a couple songs I've been working on, and that's like half of the Transient Years EP was like just me going up there, and the producer like really cleaning it up like a lot, you know."
In something I would kind of be remiss if I didn't ask, and I know potentially you've been asked this a million fucking times, and you'll probably be asked a million more from here on out as more people become aware of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
The masks that were on your, I think it was Transient Ways,
Transient
uh,
Years.
Transient Years. Sorry.
You're
With
good.
that's the shitty part about like at my job is like I can listen to music, but the flip side
You're
is
close enough,
I
bro.
can't have my phone on me, so it's like you can't look
You're
at song
close.
titles and shit. Um, but with that, I noticed, and especially like I said with Grant, pushing you guys hard for the last 6 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the mask thing was something I kind of caught on to, like in the visuals of things, like when I would see him sharing show flyers or videos or whatever.
Yeah.
And then doing a little bit of research on that, it looks like it was done by Duane Flatmo. Am I pronouncing that
Yeah.
correctly?
Yes.
Uh, so
Sir.
I think in something I had read of yours, you said he was like a street artist, more of like doing graffiti and stuff like that, like tagging and so forth.
It's not like tagging. He does like murals and stuff
Okay,
like that.
all
The
right.
legal tagging, I guess.
um, so in that regard, like, how long have you known Dwayne, and were the masks something he was doing for a completely different project, and you were like, "Yo, that's kind of dope. Like, it would be cool to kind of
Yeah,
have that be a visual for what I'm doing,"
totally.
or
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, he's like a local legend up here up in Humboldt County, and I've lived up here since I was 5, so I'd always been stoked on his artwork and stuff. And I think it was like right when I was starting the band, I was like upstairs up here, like on my computer. I think I emailed him one time, and then he didn't write me back. And then because I think I may have seen the masks on something on his website, because Tom Green had worn them on the Tonight Show
okay,
back in the day. If you look up Duane Flatmo masks, you can find all that kind of shit, like our masks that we use, but it's like they were used for these kinetic sculpture, like a vehicle thing that he had made. This race that goes on up here. It's an annual race where these dudes make these crazy rides.
okay.
Um, and so he didn't initially write me back, and then I went on Facebook, and I think I like added him on Facebook or something, and then sent him like I like slid through his DM basically, and then like it went down in the DM from there for sure. You know what I mean?
So, what about the masks? What drew you to the masks? Like to be a part of
They're
a
just
visual
sick, dude.
representation for your band?
Yeah, and they're epic. I mean, I had seen 5 of those dudes standing there, and it's like it just and I was like, oh my god, like it's. I mean, I know like Slipknot has done it, but it's like these things are like handcrafted, like paper mache type cardboard, crazy like Picasso looking shit. So yeah, for me, I've been like drawing since I was a little kid. I've been drawing just as long, or probably actually I've been drawing probably 5 years longer than I've been playing guitar. So I'm like super into art and stuff. So for me, playing in a band, it wasn't enough, dude. Playing in a band wasn't like enough for me to like to keep my attention and to keep it fun. So because being in a band can suck. It could be really depressing. It could be whack. So like, there's times where we'd all like we're over it and wanted to throw in the towel and shit. But um, the things that make it fun for us um, is largely based on the music and us getting together and playing shows, and that's like what really does it. But in the background, we're always having fun, like like Halloween's coming up, so we want to put out something in, like with the masks and stuff, because this time of year people kind of expect that from us.
Have
So
you made a pumpkin carving with any of the masks yet? Like in the pumpkins?
nah, when we were in Atlanta, we did some shit like that. We ran around with the masks, but now we haven't carved them yet. They're like really like defined and crazy, so we'd have to have someone like Dwayne knock that one out probably.
You kind of had mentioned, well, you didn't kind of, you did mention Slipknot. Something I've kind of wondered, because it was on the masks, and the visuals were on the cover of that EP, and I kind of had wondered it seems like a lot of times like did people only associate you guys with just that and kind of blow you off before they even took any time to listen to any of your music? Like, do you feel like it
Yeah, like
was
people think
a
we're a gimmick
hindrance?
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. And that's probably why a lot of people that might not like us, like because a lot of people like know who we are and I've heard of us, but they might not fuck with us or whatever. They think we're, whatever. But yeah, that's gonna happen with any band though. Like for me, it was like I figured people would be more apt to checking us out, like not knowing, like, because when you look at a band's picture, you can kind of tell, like, okay, those dudes are like a fucking post-hardcore band. They're wearing deep V's, like the swoop emo hair. Like they probably do breakdowns and shit. Um, which is like our last band. So like for me, yeah, I was just kind of wanting to like not have our book judged by the cover
Hmm.
necessarily, because a lot of people when they see us, they think we're like a heavier band too, like Slipknot. Because we were in like Rock Sound magazine and Kerrang, which they usually posted like about heavier rock bands. So people would see us looking all dark, and they'd be like, "Oh, they're playing with Armor for Sleep." Like, oh, that's weird. So that's like our biggest influence. So
Well, I was gonna say too, you know, would you want to progress and working with Duane, maybe progress the visuals with like different masks, changing them, sort of like Slipknot has done, maybe to sort of tell a different narrative of like, this is a narrative that the visual of the band or these characters that kind of are associated with the band now represent something that's specific to this new album or whatever album keeps coming out.
yeah, I mean, I can't say too much, but
Oh shit.
we've already done that in the past a little bit on the last record on Midnight Mayfair. We had these vultures that were cruising around, and those were made by Duane as well. We actually did a music video with them that we never ended up releasing because our old manager didn't want us to release it, some stupid shit. But so we had vultures that were made by Duane. We had this like fake like mayor of Mayfair. His name was Tom Breyer, and he was made by Duane. He has this big ass fucking forehead, and he was cool. And then for the new record, we have some new shit, some crazy shit that we're gonna do. We're really stoked on. So yeah, we're definitely like. I wish Duane could be a little more involved, but Duane is like a
Super
super
busy.
busy guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does Burning Man and all that kind of crazy shit. So
It's funny because again, another correlation to the use that I kind of put together with it too was very much how the band associated with Alex Party early on,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, super
how
dope.
Alex did a really good job of, within Love and Death, and then on Lies with the Liars with a cast of characters for that specific album, and kind of telling a story within the album liner notes and so forth of
Right.
those characters. So I didn't know if that was kind of something you were looking at doing more, like now that you're with signed with Tragic Hero, or if they were kind of like let's kind of stop this and maybe do a rebrand of sorts.
I mean, Tragic Hero lets us do whatever we want. That's why we signed with Tragic Hero. I mean, they're there to like kind of just distribute our stuff and stamp their name on it and support us, and maybe give us some tour support and help us get on tours. But like, yeah, I mean, so far, like everything that we've handed into them, they've been really stoked on. Like the new record, the new album cover that we sent to them. Tommy was like, "Yo, this is the best album cover we've had." So they've been a label for 10 years, and we're giving them the best record cover. I mean, our record cover was expensive. It was done really well. The guy who did it has been doing our websites for a long time. He's this German dude. He's crazy. Um, if I'm not the one doing the artwork, and then we're gonna outsource into someone who's like really dope. And usually the people that we work with are really affordable too, so it's cool. So we just make sure that the artwork represents us properly.
Something I've also noticed is that in addition to you guys doing kind of stuff on your own and being very patient with everything and kind of
Mm-hmm.
believing the process of believing in what you do and believe that like everything you're doing is making the right moves to get where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So often I see bands kind of do things, and this is kind of becoming a dead horse through my podcast over the last probably month or two, but I just see bands that do shit and don't seem to have the foresight to figure out, or the forethought to figure out what they're doing and why. Like there's no goals, there's no end game. It's just
Right.
reactions to shit. So it's like, oh, typically you'll see bands, overplay or oversaturate, or, we're going to go to this producer who has a name who's worked with, X, Y, and Z bands,
Yeah.
and we're paying a shitload of money for it, and it's like, okay, well, why are you choosing that person over someone who's a lot more affordable, near closer to you? Why are you choosing that person? Is it just to say like, hey, we recorded with this person, or is it because of the connections that person may be able to get you to, or whatever? And I don't feel like you guys have like ever done that. Like it seems like you put yourself, like when you, like you said, you worked with Casey on the EP, and then I believe, like totally blanking on the dude's name that did the full length. Um,
Uh, Brian McTurnan.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, you work with people who have a name behind them and have done some good albums, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like you've ever relied on them to be like, well, we did this record with so and so, so that means you should listen to it. It's like, no, like now the work comes in, like we got a good record that we're proud of, and we took time working with someone who could help us take those songs, and make them the best that they can be, so we can hit
Right.
the road and play these songs and build our name and build our brand. And like you guys went to South by Southwest, was it 2 years ago at this point?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, to me, like I see so many bands that just go down there just to network, and it's like you
Mhm.
guys were doing showcases, and I think like an interview I'd seen with you guys, it didn't seem like it was a very serious interview, which is fine. But like, something I thought was funny is like, I feel like so many people go down there and they're so serious about it, like, oh, this is gonna be like how we get signed and make it big, like we're gonna impress so many people because of like, we're the next big fucking band. And it
Right.
was kind of refreshing to see someone like, yeah, we hung out with bums, and we got into a bum fight, and like
Right.
our one dude got hit by a bum, and we were talking to somebody, and bums are cooler to hang out with, and we're just gonna give them flyers to like spread the word about our band. And I was like, oh, finally, like a band that like kind of is just like, this is like a big party, and you know what, fuck it, like we're here to play. We know how to do what we do.
Right.
But in a that thing has become such a big like industry thing that so
Right.
many people place such importance on, that it was really refreshing to see you guys just kind of like take the piss out of it and just be like, yeah, it's a thing and we're having fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had to have one of the interviews taken down because it was kind of offensive. Um,
In what
because
way?
I was like really I was drunk and I was
Oh,
just like saying a bunch of stupid shit. But like, for the most part, like I was really into like Tyler the Creator at the time, and so like in all of his interviews, he's really like just chilling. Like he has no filter whatsoever. And I was just like, the first, well, yeah, we went to South by 3 years, and so pretty much all 3 years, I was pretty much like that. Like, you know, late 20, I was like 25 or 26. I just didn't give a fuck. I was just like, we were getting a lot of attention like early on as a band, and so like we weren't cocky, but we were just like different to what was going on at South by. Especially there was a lot of these like indie hipster bands that were all doing the same shit. Every single hipster band at South by is playing the same fucking chord progressions, the same rip off shit. And so man, I don't know. At South by, we were just kind of like the odd dogs out. Like every showcase we did, like for like during the day, and we had a lot of shitty showcases, and that's just how it was over there. So we're always been really humble. And if we had been attacked by bums numerous times as a band, and that's part of the reason we don't tour as much, is because we've had a lot of sketchy things happen to us on the road. And when you spend months at a time on the road, especially as a DIY band, you stay in sketchy hotels all the time. And you know we're in our half of us are in our 30s now, so it's just harder for us to kind of like put your life on hold when you're just bumming it out there, dude. So
with
shit's gnar.
do you think that because sometimes when I try to look up some of these the it band from like a South by Southwest or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you just kind of, it's like, oh, this is the band we just started, and it was one dude and a bunch of hired people that he found to round out his sound
It's
or
always
whatever.
like a month later they get signed by Atlantic or some
Yeah.
shit, right?
Do you think, like, and kind of going back to something I kind of said, but do you think you coming from a hardcore background, sort of, and also a lot of the other things you were doing, growing up where you do, where it's just like a melting pot of stuff, do you think that that has allowed you to kind of look at different, like what's going on, and kind of being like, I'm going to take a little bit from this, a little bit from this, very much like Tyler the Creator, like a dude pulls from
Yeah.
so many different places,
Right.
And some people might be like, this is garbage, but those that kind of know what's going on, you're like, holy fuck, that's so brilliant. Why hasn't anyone else done this?
Yeah.
Like, do you think that that's what kind of makes you feel odd, is that, you have so much different backgrounds than a lot of these people, because your aspirations aren't to find the easiest way to get signed and just make it, quote
Right. Yeah.
unquote?
I mean, we had like a bunch of labels we were talking to back in the day that we, first couple of years that we could have signed with and kind of followed a certain route and done a certain thing. But yeah, I mean, recently we had Ryan Hunter from Envy on the Coast co-wrote some songs on the new record. He helped us arrange a bunch of the songs. He did some interludes for the record, blah blah blah. But what he told us was like, yeah, in order to be like a successful band, you these days you really have to pick something from left field and something from right field and just put them together, because otherwise it's been done. And if it's already been done, you have to be so just like over the top because people's attention spans are so short. But like, so he did that with his new project, and so we kind of were, we all come from these different backgrounds. So if we could find things that we all agree on, then that's great. And with finding musical genres that five people can agree on can get just kind of hard. So like when we first started writing, I was writing most of the shit. Like I didn't really answer your question earlier, but yeah, I did write most of the stuff in the past. But as we have new members and stuff that I trust and I'm like impressed by, that's they come in, like our guitar player that we've had now for about 5 years. He does a lot of the songwriting now because he's a great guitar player. And we shared a jazz background. We were both taught by jazz artists, and we wanted to do like a jazz fusion with progressive rock with hooks, because
Yeah.
there's no jazz bands out there that are doing like tapping, like some charm crazy stuff, but they didn't really have the hooks in there that really made people want to sing along and groove. And so that's kind of what we're doing with this new shit.
I was gonna say, as I was listening to everything, I was like, this is probably like the most accessible, like progressive music I've heard. It's like,
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm a sucker for hooks. Like, something I've always said is like, give me, like, that's why I love A Day to Remember for like what they do. It's like they can be one of the heaviest bands you've heard, like with their breakdowns and shit, but then they'll come out
Right.
with like the poppiest chorus you've ever heard, and it's like, give
Right.
me heavy with hooks, like all day.
Yeah, I
But
mean, some people like that. Some people were like, "Oh, if it's heavy, it just has to be purely heavy."
yeah,
Like they don't want hooks. But some people are just like, "Oh shit!" Like you can bring in so many more people with that. That's
yeah.
why I didn't remember sells out freaking coliseums or whatever the fuck arenas, because they're bringing in pop punk kids and they're bringing in metalcore kids. And it's smart, dude.
And I think a good correlation between, kind of keep it back to you guys, but what's interesting too is that I think that something that both of, like A Day to Remember and you guys have done is just stuck to what you do. Like, I listening to
Yeah,
everything, like, and that's kind of the nice thing about, not having like 9 albums I have to go through and get reacquainted, but
yeah,
you know you haven't changed your sound, but you can hear it maturing over the course of the full length and the EP and the couple of the singles that you've had come out. You can hear the maturing and kind of figuring out what works for you guys best and what you like, where you're going. And you could even hear on a couple of different songs, like, oh, here, like, that's something you were doing like on this one song, and now you're doing it a little bit more on like the full length.
yeah.
And it's always interesting to kind of see that and kind of see, because so many people are always like quick to shit on a band and be like, oh, this doesn't sound like the last record, or I don't know where this came
Right.
from. And it's like, if you really sit back and kind of pay attention, you can kind of see the little like breadcrumbs of like, this is kind of where we're gonna go. uh
Yeah, for sure. You can't really stray too far away from what you're doing. I mean, you can like that
Hundred
was our
did.
thing. I mean, like that was our thing at the beginning, like with our name, the Body Rampant. It was like, okay, well, we just wanted to be like crazy. We wanted to be able to do it. We didn't want to have a box within our sound. We wanted to be able to do heavier songs and more progressive songs, and then more songs with like a drum machine going and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what we wanted to do is, you know, and we've just slowly kind of like, in my opinion, just had better production. Like, I mean, we've always had good production, but we're just kind of slowly getting producers that want to spend more time with us. And um, in that regard, like I've learned a lot, and our bandmates have learned a lot about how to record and stuff. So, working with Casey and Brian and Matt McClellan and Eric Ron and all these dudes, like we've learned a lot, and so like now we kind of know how to get certain drum sounds that we want, and guitar tones, and I know what vocal mics I like, and we know what things that we can do at home. It's like, okay, well, we know we can track drums at a studio, but we can pretty much do the rest at home, send it to a mixer, and then go in and just keep overdubbing. And so we're learning how to budget ourselves and make, you know, work within our label's budget to create a record that we're stoked on, which is crazy these days because that's a whole other thing within the music industry is
Budgets go
the
away.
budgets go away, they're gone, and I mean, I've always spent a lot of money on our recordings to make sure that they were done right. But I mean, if you look at like, I mean, Brian McTurnan did our record for $7,000, so
That
did
just producing or mastering and mixing
that's
and all that stuff.
everything.
Everything.
Mixing. He had his friend Paul Levitt master it, which Paul Levitt did All Time Low, Panic at the Disco. He was their producer, but he charged us $50 a song to master those songs, and it's like so cheap. And for Brian McTurnan to do a record for under $10,000 is like so cheap. And we spent a month living in his studio, which is Salad Day Studios, where Circa, Thrice, Hot Water Music, Converge, like everyone's recorded there. Piebald, like so, we got a really good deal. I think that's $1,000 more than we spent to do an EP with Casey Bates. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's crazy, man. How we've been able to get really good sounding recordings for a pretty like a lot of people will be like, "What? You spent 7,000?" But it's like, it's just like any other business. We just had to invest, and you know,
Well, I'm sure too, like, a producer who gets a band that they're interested in and wants to work with, they'll figure out a way to do it so they can, work with that band that they want to work with.
yeah, we've had passion projects. Like we were actually first discovered by a producer who was like doing shit for free. So that song Sebrinks that we have, he produced that song for free, and that's one of the best mixes we had. The band members at the time left, and so he left me as a producer as well. But so like that kind of fell apart. And then we were working with the guitar player from Glassjaw was producing us for a while, and then those songs never came together. And it was just like there's definitely been songs that have been recorded and tracked that were just never saw the light of day. You feel me?
That sucks.
Yeah.
And you haven't thought about either redoing them or revisiting them, or are they just kind of like long and gone at
Uh,
this point?
our bass player talks about this one song in particular like all the time because we used to play it all the time in our set, and it's almost kind of been rewritten. Like I used like the same chord progression of the verse on one of our new songs on our new record. So we're kind of like taking riffs, and I think there's another riff that I took. Um, so I mean, we would either remix and master it, or I just like swoop a riff and just reuse it. Recycle a riff or two.
It's funny. I had a long time ago when I was jamming with old roommates, I had a progression that I'd never really heard. And it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of cool, but then we were jamming on another song and I used the exact same thing, but the same chord progression, but then I added like a little lead note over it,
Right.
over a bar chord progression, and I was just like, he's like, isn't that the same thing? I go, yeah, but I did this instead at the tail, and the other
Right.
one is just this followed by another bar chord, and then he was
You just
like,
gotta pick one.
yeah, well, then I was like, he goes, well, I mean, like they both work, and I was like, I know they work. I was like, but if we ever like would do anything with these, I guess I'm gonna have to like figure out which one I want that to be in. And
Right.
he was like, or you just do enough shit and kind of bury like something else over it so you can't really hear the root notes being the same. And I was like, I guess I don't know. I'm not much of a songwriter, so I'll have to take your word for it. But I felt
Yeah.
really conflicted about being like, I like these both, but they're basically the identical chord progression. Someone's
Well,
gonna
yeah.
notice.
There's a jazz progression. It's digga digga do, and then there's like a couple different jazz little licks that our guitar player showed me, and then they're used all over the jazz like scene. Like there's just certain licks, and it's like the same thing with like post hardcore. It's like there's a fucking lick. I don't know. It's just like a lead, just like the.
Oh yeah.
It's just like like
Well, I was
so
gonna
many
say,
post
depending
hardcore.
on where I was trying to figure out, looking at the frets where that was, I was like, that's almost the melody lead line to Armor for Sleep's fucking
So many
song
bands use
after.
that.
I was gonna say there's that bit, like, whatever the fucking song after "Truth About Heaven." That like next song. That's almost like their verse. Like the lead verse line in that. I can't remember what that song's called. Regardless.
Yeah, I mean there's Armor for Sleep has a lot of riffs that they use a lot, and they'll change it a little bit. They'll just put
Oh,
a little bit of
Atreyu and System of a Down, I think, are two of the worst. Like, if you Atreyu is notorious for using the exact same chorus progression. It's like the same 4 or 5 chords in a different like progression. It's whatever, but
the fucking Chiodos riffs and shit, Chiodos breakdowns and shit like that.
yeah, they're sort of they're from here in Michigan. I was a
We don't
band I
even
just
talk
never
about
got. I was gonna say I just never got into that band.
no. They were cool. Their first record was cool.
I guess I'll take your word for it.
Sorry,
uh,
sorry, Greg.
no, that's fine. Actually, kind of talking about a bunch of different bands and writing songs. I had actually found that you apparently were a collaborator on Being as an Ocean's first record.
The wasn't the first record. It was the self-titled one.
Okay.
The one with like the painting of the chick on the front, the black one.
I didn't see that. It brought your name up when I was trying to find interviews you had done, and then that was something that when I googled it, it popped up and it was like JM Lopez, collaborative writer, co-writer on Being as an Ocean's record, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Is that something you do a lot of, like collaborating with other
Nah,
artists?
that
Or?
was just nah. Um, Tyler's my homie, their guitar player, and Daniel Wan from Capsize, he's like the homie. They're like those dudes are like brothers, you know. So they were Body Rampant fans from like very early on, and we'd played shows with their band and stuff, and so that just kind of popped up because Being as an Ocean tours so much, you know, they tour
Yeah, we
so
just
much.
went and saw them on Warped Tour. My wife just got into them because
Yeah,
she was out in I think Utah or whatever, and went and saw them with Hundredth, which is a band I got into a couple years ago.
right.
And she was like, "Oh, I love this band, Being as an Ocean." So we went and saw them. I've known of the name, just not aware of the music until very recently. So when
Yeah.
she was playing a bunch of their music, uh, and I saw that, I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." Like, I don't really, and again, I didn't really click on the link, but you know, I think it's interesting when you kind of get into more people who write a lot of music and play a lot of different instruments, is that you are able to find that, like Bruno Mars wrote a lot of songs for a lot of people before he struck it on his own, or like Lady Gaga wrote like shit for Britney Spears, and
Right.
then eventually, like, they just kind of come out from behind the scenes and start, wanting to be writing and playing their own songs. So I didn't know
Yeah.
if like that was something that you had been doing, like collaborating with a lot of artists and writing and just kind of being a behind the scenes guy, or if it was just kind of like a one off thing.
No, I mean I'd help. Like Capsize hit me up. Like Daniel from Capsize hit me up when he first started like singing with them. He was, we would do FaceTimes, and he would just kind of he would sing me melodies, and I would kind of just like be like, oh, we'll sing that in the higher register, and just really belt it, and just little things like that I would help him with, and like with the Being as an Ocean thing, I like co-wrote pretty much every song, and so like that those things came up, and I've been trying to do things. I'm like down if it makes sense, and if it's worth my time, I'm down if people hit me up to make it work. But like that Being as an Ocean record was like the main thing that I've done outside of the Body Rampant, like so that was cool. Just to say that I did it was like the main reason, was we got into some beef because I didn't make anything off of it, and we got a manager off of it who we have since fired, and Being as an Ocean has since fired. But and I said some shit on Facebook about Being as an Ocean, like like you guys never did shit for us and blah blah blah. But in reality, Tyler has pushed us to a lot of people. He tried getting us on Equal Vision. Daniel tried getting us on Equal Vision. So I'm still cool with Tyler. Like we're straight, but like I think I just thought I would get paid. I was under the understanding that I was going to get paid for my work, and Nick from Invoke never sent me a check. There was never a check written. I don't care about the money shit. I think I was just hoping that maybe they would put us on a show or two. I know they have an agent and they don't really control their touring that they do, but if they have a local show, they could have thrown us on. That would have been cool. And so I was really butthurt about that. So
Right. Understandable. I didn't mean to bring up all that. I like I said, I just pulled up that thing and I was like, huh. And because I think that's something that a lot of people like. I feel like a lot of people nowadays are I think becoming more open to co-writes, and
Hmm.
I think it's something that a lot of the casual fans of bands are kind of starting to learn about too. Is that their favorite singer or lyricist or whatever may not have written the song
Yeah.
that they love the most. That somebody else
Right.
is responsible for it.
Right.
And something that I kind of and you talking about working with the producers and stuff like that was that you had talked about earlier about how you've been working with other artists on or co-writers and stuff like that on the newer stuff is
Yeah.
that I don't feel like that's something that a lot of bands, especially younger, quote unquote younger bands, take advantage of. Is someone that can help make a song better. Like they're
Oh
so
yeah. People are
dead set
so
on
like
being like, oh,
anal.
it's me and it has to be me, all me. And
Yeah.
it's like sometimes like the best song is the one that it may not be the one you write. It's some like
Right.
ideas and stuff like that. And I think people are afraid to collab or whatever for whatever reason. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting to hear that you between being a co-writer yourself and co-writing with others that it's something I think is probably is what helps you make the best song.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's how a lot of our best songs that came about because we let our producers kind of take the reign and the melody line for Sebrinks, our producer wrote. I had the lyric and he had the melody, and we put it together and it made a dope chorus. And I don't mind giving him props for that. I mean, they, being as an ocean, actually gave me props, and they had a 4-page alternative press spread. And my name's written in the article, as a co-writer in their album. So Joel didn't have to do that. Like Joel fucking just, gave me props, and I'm really thankful that they did that. That was like probably a little bit of exposure, but it's just for me, that's really cool.
Right.
So it was
Kind of
worth it for me.
yeah. Kind of
It was
moving
fun.
on to signing with Tragic Hero. You guys recently announced that, even though this was actually in, and maybe not to your knowledge, but Grant and I have been talking about doing this for a few months actually,
Yeah.
and I had to kind of put it on hold until the announcement was made.
Hmm.
And so when you guys finally announced it, like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, "Oh, finally, can we do this conversation?" Because
Yeah.
even without this, I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys because I think you guys put out good music, and I think the image and stuff like that, and kind of being a very conscious band of a lot of the things you're doing, I think is interesting and refreshing. Considering, like I said, a lot of bands just do shit aimlessly and don't have any rhyme or reason as to why they do things, and I don't think
Yeah.
that's how this band has been handled from day one.
No.
Uh, but you guys put out a new song, Northern Sky,
Yeah.
and is this actually a song that's going to be on the album, or is this just a like promotional single? Okay.
It's on
Because
the record.
I was gonna say, because a lot of times you'll see this where it's like, oh, the song, and then it's not on the, it's like a B side basically or whatever, like a promotional single that people use, and then it's like, oh, okay, like, okay.
Yeah.
Uh, how did you end up getting Bradley Walden from Emarosa, who's also a Michigan native?
That was Grant actually.
Okay, I kind of figured the Michigan tie
Yeah.
to get that, but
Yeah.
uh,
Grant's known Bradley for a while from when he was in Squid the Whale and stuff like that.
great band.
Um, Bradley has been a fan of our band since then. Since back in the day, since the Transient Years days, and he's we. I think I don't think we played with Squid the Whale. I think we just went to their show out in Canoga Park back in the day, like 8 years ago or something, 7 years ago. And I had always been really fond of him as a front man. He's always been just an amazing front man. Like holy shit, that's what he was born to do, obviously.
Yeah,
Um, and so I think me and Grant were like brainstorming like who we want on the record. And Grant was like, "Yo, I can get Bradley. Like I could at least try. I can give you his number or whatever." And so we met up with Bradley at House of Blues. We had a show at House of Blues in like I think it was Orange County. It was when they were at Disneyland.
okay,
And he came out to the show and we kicked it, and we kind of discussed what we wanted, and we just when we recorded the new record, we just left certain spots open in each song, um, either letting it like be part for a guitar solo for someone else to come in, like a guest player to come in, or we have a saxophone player that came in on a part, or a guest vocalist player or whatever. So um, we let him write the lyrics. I mean, I think I sent him my lyrics to the song, what it was about, and then he wrote his lyrics, and it just like I think it only took like a couple months, and we gave him like a couple $100 or something. It was really like super chill, and yeah, we were really stoked that he did it for us, and yeah, came about, and it came out really good. So
It was, yeah. When I saw it, I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting because he hasn't really, that I've noticed, he hasn't done any guest vocals since he's been in Emarosa yet.
mm,
So this is like one of the first features I think he's done on someone else's stuff, and I kind of figured it was probably Grant who kind of helped facilitate that, but I wasn't sure.
yeah, yeah, most definitely Grant. Shout out Grant, shout out for sure.
uh, who are some, and we'll kind of wind this down. Who are some other guests that you would love to have? You would love to either you just work with writing, whether it be for Body Rampant or just songs in general, or working with people for their shit. Like, who would you dream collaborations? Who would you love to work with?
Um, there's dudes like Dave Grohl that'd be sick to drum on the record or something like that. Have him drum on a song. We tried getting Thundercat to play bass on the record. He's this crazy funk bass player.
It's from Parliament.
Uh, nah, he's like a newer dude.
Okay.
Um, Crazy ass dude. Um, Shit, man. I don't know. Like, there was a bunch of fools that we tried to get. We tried to get Jason from Let Live. I sent him the song, and he was digging it, and then never really got him to lay down the track. And then we sent it to Joel from Being As an Ocean, and then he never really had the time to do it. And then we ended up sending it to Daniel from Capsize, and that was Small Side Effect, which just came out, which we released a year ago. It's on the record as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I think our drummer and guitar player would have a better answer to this question than me because they love all these crazy players and stuff. But for me, we actually pulled off a lot of the collabs, that we wanted, which was kind of cool.
We're with. It seems like with this record's probably been done from what I've gathered for a little while now.
Couple years.
Yeah. How long is it? How does it feel to finally be on the cusp of this thing coming out? Like, are you
Yeah.
ready for it to come out and grind behind it for like a year or two, or are you
Yeah,
already like itching to be like, all right, fuck that, that's done now. Like, let's start writing new shit, and like you're already thinking about the next record because you've been sitting with these songs for as long as you have.
it's like both. I mean, we're ready to like knock out these music videos and stuff, and do all like the cool artsy promotional stuff because that's like what's really fun about being in this band is like taking the masks and doing promo stuff with the masks. Because when we go into public with those things, people like flip out, and we get a lot of attention, and it's fun. Um, Once we can kind of like get the album announced and maybe like pre-orders up, I think that's when we're gonna start like writing more, more shit. Cause like, excuse me, we are like, it's for me especially, my mindset's been all over the place. Just getting the deals. We signed the deal back in January, so like it's been
Yeah.
taking a lot of time getting everything, the album art, the marketing stuff, and all that shit. So like that kind of shit on top of your everyday life definitely takes up a lot of space in your brain to where you just like have like it's kind of like a writer's block almost where you're just like not even you don't feel creative like whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
That,
so yeah, we're gonna start. I think in the next like 2 or 3 months we will probably start writing. Like me and James, our drummer, actually wrote about 2 or 3 songs about 6 months ago. So we kind of just like weave songwriting like in and out, and I think we might use like one of the songs. Like one of the songs we wrote, it's like pretty fucking cool. So it's kind of just about um, taking things and just like doing like 3 or 4 different demos until the song is like exactly how it should be. And a lot of the times when we do a full length record, we don't have enough time to like fully demo out each song properly.
right.
Um, the the collaboration that we did on one of the records with a drummer I think it's going to be one of the next songs we put out. I actually did a demo of the song like 5 times on my computer before we sent the song to him. I think by the time I had finished writing the song, he didn't even listen to it. He was like, "All right, like what's the BPM?" And then he just went in there and just like laced it out and just crushed it.
It's funny how people
So
can do that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Grammy award-winning drummer, so we were able to like get some beasts on the record, man.
Are you?
So
It is funny that I don't think people realize the process, especially. Are you guys? I assume you guys are gonna put this record out on vinyl, and maybe that's what's been holding it up too.
no, that hasn't been what's holding it up. I think um, we're gonna release the vinyl later. We're gonna
Okay.
like announce the record and then put out the digital, version. I can't really say too much, but yeah, it's not gonna all come out at once. Like we're definitely gonna like string things out and
So
like
you're gonna pull a Kanye with the Life of Pablo and just keep putting out remastered, different versions of the
yeah,
same
we're gonna
record,
just keep
adding
I'm
to it.
gonna yeah, we're gonna add different players to different sections of each song. It's gonna be crazy.
Uh, no, because I think that that's something that a bunch of bands they'll do the pre-orders and stuff like that, and people are like, "Well, why is it taking so long?" It's like, well, there's like a 5 6 month headway on getting
Yeah,
vinyl done, and I
right.
mean, like case in point, I just got my Louder Now Taking Back Sunday record yesterday. I
Wow.
pre-ordered that in like February, and it was
Yeah.
supposed to be here in August. So
And that album came out like 10 years ago.
yeah. Same with my story of the year. Like I just pre-ordered that like in March or whatever, and then like I emailed them
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck is going on with this?" Like, "Oh, we should have that this week." And I was like, the last update I got was that I should have it by like August 13th, and obviously that was like almost 2 months ago. So what the
Right.
fuck? And I don't think people understand like it takes a long time. Like if you're doing vinyl to especially at least one or two variants at least. I mean that's half a year just to be on the waiting list to get it out. And so I didn't know if that was something that was taking a little while or something you've been thinking about with obviously being a very visual focused band on making sure you have a lot of different ways to present your band. So I figured maybe
Right.
that was a medium you would take advantage of.
No, we are. We've actually never we did a 7 inch through In the Clouds Records last year, but it was a lathe cut 7 inch, so it was kind of like a really super DIY thing. Other than the lathe cut, we haven't released any vinyl, so we're actually really stoked. We're gonna release the album on vinyl, and we're actually going to release all of our old previous material on vinyl independently. We're just gonna do that ourselves, and so we're gonna have a bunch of different vinyl colors for each. Each release will have a different variant and stuff like that, and so you can buy the new record through the label, and you can buy the old stuff through us. So
I was
we're
gonna
stoked.
say I don't know if there's a when we get done with this I should send you a contact of a friend that I think Grant also knows that lives out your way out in
Mm-hmm.
California. Owns like a boutique label and he is does a lot of like hand cutting, hand numbered, does like
Right.
just crazy shit. Did a lot of the beginning Bad Rabbit stuff.
Oh, Mind Never Matter Records.
Yep,
Yeah.
Austin.
Yeah. He wasn't really feeling us, I don't think.
Oh,
Um,
well, that doesn't surprise me either. He's kind of an ass.
yeah.
He's kind of an asshole like that, like a music snob at times. Like,
He wasn't into us. We've been pitched to so many labels, dude. I mean, so many fucking labels, and we've actually had meetings and had labels come out to our shows a lot. Like, fucking, I could Triple Crown, Roadrunner,
that's weird.
just a bunch, and they're random. Razor and Tie hit us up. Um, I'm just like dropping all these random ass names, but yeah, it's just kind of random when a really big label like Razor and Tie is like a major label,
Yep.
and a
I'm
lot of
honestly
people.
surprised you guys didn't end up on Equal Vision. Like when I kept listening to your shows, like God, there's like so many bands that you guys
Yeah,
would
I
fit
mean
with on that label.
we'd been pitched to Equal Vision by probably 3 or 4 different people, and Equal Vision was just not about us. That dude was just like I don't yeah, I mean that's the way I look at it. I think we would fit really well on that label, but Tragic Hero is really cool because they had bands that are heavier that crossed over into almost like a metal hardcore genre.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the area that we want to go, but when you come to our show and you kind of see
The
that,
energy that, from what I can tell from a YouTube video, very much seems
right,
like that
yeah,
kind of vibe.
yeah, we're not about chilling. Like we're all about like we want to write these like really chill songs, and like we love like dream pop and like all this like really chill vibey music, but like we're so crazy live that we can't even like settle down. We can't even like perform any of those songs live because all we want to do is just go crazy. And so like yeah, so for Equal Vision would have been cool for that, but Equal Vision also has a lot of bands that don't do anything and that are shelved and have eventually been cut from the label. Being as an Ocean actually just bought themselves out of their Equal Vision contract before they could even release their record. Um, so they're, we've had friends, bands that have been dropped by the label, and so hearing things like we've actually heard more negative things about Equal Vision than we have about Tragic Hero. So Tragic Hero actually tried to sign the Body Rampant like a long ass time. I'm sorry, I mean Every Bridge Burned a long ass time ago, which was when we were like in between our Rise shit, and so I think Every Bridge Burned was a good like kind of introduction to getting in with those labels because Tragic Hero actually had been following us for like quite some time. They had emailed us on Facebook and were like, "Hey, we've been watching you guys for like years. Like, do you guys have a new record?" And we're like, "Yeah, we've been sitting on this record. Like, what's your email? Like, where's she? And then so we sent it to him, and the record was already done when Tragic hit us up. We were actually in the process of sequencing it and mastering it and making sure that it flowed the way we wanted it to flow and everything. So crazy.
Uh, Kind of the last question. I always end these episodes with a song. What would you like me to play the episode out to?
Yeah, I mean, you can play Northern Sky. I mean, that's the new song we're trying to push. I mean, it's
Is it
vibey and it's definitely the direction that we're trying to go into more. It's like heavy rhythms, but the chords are really pretty and the guitar tones are really pretty, and we're trying to like dial down on our distortion on our guitars because people really like listening to like music that's a little more like chill. We've noticed, and um, so that's what I kind of want people to listen to. That's the song that we're playing live. Like we open up our set with that song, and we think it brings in a lot of people. So
what can you
yeah,
tell me about it lyrically about it?
lyrically, it's about a guy who is like a drunk and goes off into kind of like his own little world. But like it starts out he's in the bar, and then it goes off into some kind of like love. Where like once Bradley got a hold of it, it turned into some like love, a lot of love kind of stuff going on.
Crazy.
But it's also about like letting go of things that you can't change, and that's like pretty much the chorus. And just a lot of my lyrics are just about like life, and just interweaving like cool life stories with like poetic shit, and trying to be as like writing lyrics is hard. That's the hardest part about this band. So it's like
I figured
I
it would be arranging some of the stuff you're doing within the songs and finding because something I kept
uh,
thinking to
that's the
myself as
easiest
I was like,
part.
holy shit, your melodies and shit are so good and everything like they
Thanks,
soar
bro.
and so like I was like fuck like to me I feel like that'd be the harder thing is like writing strong melodies like you do, not necessarily putting the vocals over it or even arranging the parts to make the punch of the strong like hooks and shit like that much more. I figured that would
Yeah.
be the harder part.
No, thanks, man. No, I mean, for me, musically, the music stuff just kind of like comes out, like it's been there since I was a kid, and so like the music stuff's easy, but being like letting your emotions out, especially in front of other people, has always been like what's hard, what's hard to do, like especially being in the studio, you got your producer right there, and you got like your bass player and guitar player right there, and you're like trying to be like you're pouring your heart out, and it's like if you really want to connect with these people you have to be super emotional, or else it's not no one's gonna fucking be able to like even listen to your shit. And so um yeah, the music stuff we can just shit out, so we can shit out instrumentals all day and it'll be butter, but and then I have to sit on them for like months and months to. And the melodies is another thing too, which can take time, because I like the verses to be really low key, and then when the hook comes in, and that's where I have trouble. I mean, I'm not really a hook guy. I don't really write hooks, but when I have people there to like guide me or help me, if I have the right producer to like, yo, like, try this melody. So you mean like we were talking about earlier. So it's like I definitely need help, and it's when I'm rushed. Sometimes things turns out cool, and sometimes they don't. And so it's really just about taking your time, and that's what we've learned,
do
over the
you
years.
do you write like lyrics or poems or whatever? Do you write constantly, or are
No,
you like one of those like only when I need to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much one of those only when I need to guys. I really want to start like reading more, just like crazy ass books and just whatever, just to get my mind back in that mind state where I'm being really creative and I want to pen down some stuff because as you get older, you you kind of tend to lose your creativity a little bit. You just kind of like you do things like you do creative shit less, because you have to do more adult shit more. And so it's really about finding that creative balance and staying inspired. And the rock music industry is really different now too because there's way less bands that come out that are inspiring. So, like Bad Rabbits just put out their last record, and I was so inspired. And they've been a huge influence on me for
I actually
since
was
day.
gonna say that would be a great tour.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, I think playing with them would be amazing. I mean, we've seen them live at South by. We've kicked it with them. They're great guys. I mean, they follow us on Instagram. It's all cool. But it's genre pushing bands like that inspire us. Like this new band Laney. They're like a pop band, but they're like really their instrumentals are just amazing. The dude's vocals are amazing, and so it's really just about the right time, being inspired by the right bands that make you really want to get out there, and things that are going on in your life are going to make you want to write more lyrics too. Like if you're kind of in a stagnant point in your life, you're not really going to want to write. It's like, okay, I'm fucking chilling. I have nothing to write about. So it's really about what's going on in your life too. Same time, music. That's why the music just comes out all the time because you could always write a guitar lick. It might not be that tight, but you know.
uh,
I don't know.
and then we'll end it with where can people follow you and or your band across the
Yeah,
socials?
just the Body Rampant on everything.
All one word, no
I
underscores, no nothing, nothing weird.
no, yeah, we were able to snag all of the social medias without any weird, um, you know, any bullshit. So I don't have social media. I have a Facebook, but that's it. So just follow the Body Rampant on whatever.
Awesome. Well, hopefully the record will be out soonish,
Yeah,
and that will mean hopefully some subsequent touring,
yeah,
and then
uh,
you guys will make it out here to the Midwest at least. So I think
yeah.
there was actually talks. Grant and I were trying to do a tour with a band I usually book out of New York, and then I think something fell through. Like you guys didn't tour, taking another tour or whatever. But
Mm.
would have been fun to try to like bring East and West Coast and somehow get them out to the Midwest, because that was what we were trying to figure out is how to get one from one end and to the other. And we were like, oh, I know a lot of people in the Midwest, and it's like, yeah, so just do that. But
No,
it'll
yeah,
be, I think, good.
we'll get out there for sure. Yeah, next year especially. Once January comes, actually, we have a bunch of stuff we're planning right now. Trying to get a couple tours. One of the tours we're trying to get on right now is an East Coast tour. So
It's
yeah,
fun. I
we'll get there, man.
was gonna say I just heard that someone was talking about how they their band or a band they're looking at touring with is booking for 2019 already. I was like, Jesus
That's fucking
Christ.
insane. Yeah, that's how it is. People book. The bigger your band is, the farther out you book for. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, we book like 2 months out. It's like, fuck it,
Yeah.
get her done.
Yeah. All right. Well, I
Yeah,
will let
thanks,
you go,
John.
and thank you for taking the time to chat with me, and
Yeah, most definitely, man.
hopefully be seeing you guys soon.
Oh, you will for sure.
All right. Enjoy the rest of
Thanks,
your night.
brother.